guys. You guys eat enough food? You ate a little too much, probably. I'm just going to introduce Kurt to you guys really quick and we can get started. Kurt is an affiliate instructor at Spring Arbor University. You teach some sociology courses.
Social work classes.
Social work, okay.
Yeah.
He's the author of A Learner's Guide to Abolishing Modern Day Slavery. So he's going to talk to you today about slavery in the world of ideas. Enjoy.
Thank you. All right. So I really appreciate all of you being here today. As I tell my students, time is not money, time is life. And so the fact that we're here today and you're sharing your time, we're sharing life with each other. And so I just want you to know I appreciate that. And hopefully it's a worthy investment when we're all done. My background is obviously social work. That's what I teach here at the school. But my background before that is philosophy. And so I kind of got in the philosophy thing. I love thinking through, thinking critically, breaking down problems. But I also like to solve them and try to think of the action steps necessary to what I just spent all that time thinking about, Say, I don't want to just think about it and say, well, that was interesting. Let's see what's on TV, right? I want to think about it, understand it, and say, okay, now let's get to work, right? So I know much of the conference is really about walking away with tangible, practical things we can do to abolish slavery. And so just rest assured that I will provide some of those practical things at the end of the session. But most of the session we have today will be in the world of ideas and thinking critically about the concepts that exist when we talk about slavery. All right? So hold on to your shorts. We'll get through. It's going to be, it's not a ton of information, but it can be heavy information. All right? So I highly encourage you to take notes. At least in my experience, these are ideas that tend to stay with us, right? Some of these conversations we're going to have today have kept me up at night more than a few times. So, you ready? All right. Let me first ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very sure, 1 being not at all, how possible do you think it is, truly, how truly possible do you think it is to abolish modern day slavery? Go. Scale of 1 to 10. What? I'm sorry, which one?
1.
1, okay.
I would give it higher, maybe like a 7 or an 8.
Okay. 6, okay. I'm gonna use it now.
Probably 6.
Okay.
Probably 7.
7. How about you?
Somewhere below 5.
Okay.
1.
1, okay.
4 or 5.
Okay.
I'm going to go with 3.
All right.
I'd give it a 5.
Okay.
I'll just do 2, but I think it's 1.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. I appreciate your honesty. So hopefully through this workshop and through the conference itself, I want you to think about, what do I have to do to bump up a number? Wherever you're at, whatever number you said, my hope for you is that we bump you up a number, okay? And my premise for why I chose this topic to give a discussion on is because if we don't understand these basic concepts and all the other things that we try to do are fueled by good intentions but not sound ideas. And that's problematic. That's not sustainable. As a social worker, I can assure you, there are a lot of people trying to do a lot of good things in this world fueled by good intentions, not to actually do work that's substantive and lasting because they don't have the concepts in place, all right? So, let's start with society. Human trafficking is a social problem, right? It's big and broad and it's complex, that we say, okay? What is a society? Before we can understand a social problem, what is a society? What are we talking about? A society of ants? a society of antelopes, monkeys. When we talk about a society, what are we talking a society of? People, human beings, right? A human society. The very definition of society is as simple as that. A whole lot of humans, right? You're talking about it, the community of Spring Arbor is a certain amount of human beings that live in this area we call Spring Arbor, right? The United States of America, if you're an American citizen, we're talking about a group of people, a lot of people who live in this area of Earth that we call the United States, right? So the very definition of society is based upon our view of human nature. Whatever we think is good for one person translates into what we think is good for a whole society. Does that make sense? Because by definition, a whole society is a lot of individuals. So if a person thinks, if I have a belief that human beings are just animals, then necessarily I think a whole society is a whole bunch of animals. Does that make sense? Or if I think the human person is a valuable, dignified being, then I think society is a whole bunch of valuable, dignified beings. Does that make sense? So it necessarily goes together. What we're talking about today, we're talking about social problems. Now, in the world of, well, let me step back and say, these are 4 different areas of society, right? There's a lot of different levels, a lot of different areas of society. Today, I'll just briefly talk about 4. The world of politics, okay? Now, the good news is, in the world of politics, slavery is abolished, right? Politically, it's been done. It's against the law. It's illegal everywhere in the world, but yet it goes on everywhere in the world. Who'd have thunk that solving problems only politically doesn't always solve the problem holistically? It's in economics. Right? It's in the supply chain. It's demanded. Okay? Whatever we're talking about, sex slavery or forced labor, it's in demand. That's why it's supplied. Okay? The reason why there are 10-year-old girls or younger being sold into sex slavery is because there are people demanding 10-year-old girls to provide sexual favors, right? So that's economics. And healthcare. Sorry, my handwriting can be a little sloppy. Organ removal, right? Kidneys, livers, vital organs. Disturbing stuff. Right? So in healthcare, there's a demand for body organs. And it's found in some ways to be supplied through the black market through human trafficking. People who are coerced to give up body organs or tricked, knowingly or unknowingly. So it's in healthcare. Culture. I can say a lot of things about culture, but let me just say, talk about sex slavery. A culture that embraces or promotes, exaggerates human sexuality. The objectification of the human person. And I don't mean merely just the objectification of women. That's the easiest part because there's always, that's the visual that we get. That's what we see most commonly. But to the men in the room and in the world, let's not deceive ourselves. That for those who are guilty of fueling this type of industry, we're objectifying ourselves as well. We're treating ourselves just as objects. right? So it's a cultural issue, okay? Where it's normal in a way. Okay. So society and problems. And let me stress with problems that we don't all agree on what the nature of the problem is, whether it's a problem at all. If I were a slave owner giving this workshop, do you think I would be saying slavery is a big problem in the world that needs to be abolished? I like it. It feeds a family. It gives me sustains my life, my well-being, right? So we have to understand the nature of the problem. Now, what's this big chain of events? The nature of the problem and understanding the nature of the problem. We have to know the problem before we can fix it. But before we can fix it or understand the nature of the problem, we have to understand what is a flourishing society? How should a society actually work? What is good for a society of people? So let me give you an example why this is important. Do you ever take your car to a mechanic? The presumption, and we don't even think about it in these terms, but the presumption when we take a car to a mechanic is they know how to fix it, right? Now you don't want to bring your car to me and have me try to fix it, because I have no idea how it should work. I don't know what all those moving parts do. But the nature of a good mechanic is that they understand how it should work, right? How it should work properly. And because of that, they're able to identify what's wrong with it. You see that little gasket right there? That's shaped like this, and it should be shaped like that. And that's why you have a big problem, right? So they understand how it should work, which is precisely what lets them see and understand the problem, and therefore how to fix it. Does that make sense? So we have to be able to think critically, what is a flourishing society? How should a society actually run and work? But as I already pointed out, our view of society and what a flourishing society is based upon our view of human nature. What does a flourishing person look like? How does a human being, one human being, how do I flourish? Because however I define that becomes the premise of how I define a flourishing society. Does that make sense? So you see how we're getting deeper and deeper, right? In the world of politics, we can debate about the problems, and we can debate about the solutions to the problems, right? But if we don't agree, if we're debating only the solutions, and we don't agree on the nature of the problem, what actually is the problem, what the cause of the problem is, because we don't actually agree on what a flourishing society looks like and how it should work, and we'll go deeper. We'll go deeper to the root causes of where we really divide. All right, I'm gonna give this argument, and if you're taking notes, I encourage you to write it down. What's good for something is based on its nature. What's good for something is based on its nature. For example, what is good for a fish is based on the nature of a fish. What's good for a horse is based on the nature of a horse. So if you saw me go out to the local pond, and I took my pet horse out there, and I just dumped it in the middle of the pond, what are you thinking? What in the heck is he doing? That's cruel. That's mean. That's wrong, right? What if I took my little pet guppy that I love and cherish, and I took him out to the middle of the pond and let him free? Oh, that's beautiful, letting his little fish swim free, right? What's the difference? The difference is that based on the nature of the fish, they belong in the water. It's good for them to be in the water, right? That's what a fish is. That's where a fish lives. That's where a fish thrives. But not a horse, right? A horse doesn't belong in the water. It's not in its nature to swim underwater. Does that make sense? If I took a fish and put it out in the grassy field, said free, it'd be like a fish out of water. Right? So, what's good for something is based on the nature. Therefore, what is good for a human is based on the nature of a human. Are you with me? If we can understand human nature as it actually is, what a human being is, then we can necessarily derive what is good for a human person, what is bad for a human person, and begin to have all of the necessary building blocks we need for flourishing people and a flourishing society. That's why the world of ideas is so important. Because in the world of ideas, not everyone thinks slavery is wrong. It's easy to say, yes, slavery is apprehensible. It's abhorrent. But there's a lot of people that have slaves. They don't think it's very wrong. In the world of ideas, you versus them, head to head. Who's right? Who wins? Because if we don't win the world of ideas, if we can't demonstrate the clarity, the truth of human dignity in the world of ideas, then all of the rest, much of the rest, is in vain. And so I suggest to you that when you gave your number, scale of 1 to 10, how possible, your number it reflects, whatever it was, to what degree you think it's possible to win this battle in the world of ideas. Because it's only a daunting task and impossible or highly improbable in reality if it's not probable to actually win the debate in the world of ideas. Does that make sense? All right, now let's go deeper. Okay, we want solutions, right? We want solutions. The nature of the solution and the type of solution we come up with is based upon the nature of the problem. And the nature of the problem we come to understand is based upon the nature of society and what we think about that. But where does this come from? View of the human person. Your view of human nature. Let me say it to you a few different ways. Who? Where? When? Why? What? Who are you? I've talked to a lot of young people and they say, you don't know me. You don't know me, man. You don't know who I am, where I'm from, what I've been through. We just met, right? Who are you? Who am I? Where am I? Physically, where am I? Right? Where am I mentally? Where am I emotionally? Where am I? When? Right? I exist now. There was a time I didn't. I didn't live during the Middle Ages. I'm alive now. That plays a huge part in what I do with my life, right? Based on the current state of affairs. When am I? Why am I? Why am I here? Why do I exist? All right, the epic questions. Like I said, the ones that can keep you up at night. Give you all the reason to dream and be comfortable, or give you all the reasons to be uncomfortable, depending on how well we know the answers to those questions. But what I'm going to talk today is on the what. What am I? What are you? What are we? In the Rwandan genocide, it was very common to hear people referred to as cockroaches. You're a cockroach. In the Holocaust, dogs. Right? Send those dogs to the camp. Down south, slavery in the United States, monkeys. Anything but a valuable, dignified human person. One of the very ways slave owners can help themselves sleep at night is by deceiving themselves that they're not slaving equal human beings, dignified persons as equal as they are, but deny their human dignity and reduce them to something other than a valuable person. They're an animal. Therefore, I can do it. Right? For whatever reason, whatever justification, their skin color, their gender, their economics, their nationality, fill in the blank. Right? Whatever. So the what? Okay. All right. We're going to talk generally, and Savannah, you'll give me a heads up when I'm like 20 minutes, 15, 20 closing. All right. All right. We're going to start moving a little fast, but stay with me. Okay. I'm going to use some words that you may be familiar with that you may not. Okay. One way we're going to look at the view of human nature, because I want you to understand how epically different of a view of a human person our worldviews determine. All right? We're going to talk about body and soul. Through the lens of the worldview, we think of everything that's in the world. Whatever our worldview is determines and dictates all the things that we think about in the world, that we find in the world. Right? So humans live on the world, on the earth, so my worldview includes humans. Does that make sense? So it's through the lens of the worldview that I determine my view of human nature. Let me give you some examples and explain. Material monism, otherwise known as naturalism or humanism. In this worldview, only matter exists. Only matter exists. There's no soul, there's no spirit, there's nothing non-physical. Everything is explained in physical explanations. Does that make sense? So, the entire universe is only physical. By necessary default, by necessary deduction, when I think of the human person, they're only a body. That's it. How could you possibly have a soul? My worldview is such that there is nothing there's no soul, there's no spirit, there's nothing like that in the world. So of course my view of human nature is that you don't have one, I don't have one, there's no such thing. Does that make sense? I'm not going to say, oh, there's no soul, but I have one. It's inconsistent. It's irrational. Okay. Spiritual monism. It's the other option, the opposite option. Only spirit exists. There is no material world. The material world is an illusion. It's not real. You have to transcend it. You have to recognize the reality that there is nothing real about the material world. Okay? Now, in this view, through the lens of this worldview, when it comes to my view of the human person, of course I don't think you have a body or I have a body. For real. Like I think I have one now and I live like I have one now, but ultimately speaking, at the end of the day, in the objective, like ultimate reality, like this isn't real. This is to be escaped in some fashion or overcome in some fashion, right? Enter in views of karma and reincarnation and these types of ideas, okay? So my view of the human person now, compare the view through the lens of a materialist and a spiritual monist. Their view of the human person couldn't be more different, right? Like it's epically different. Hence why you have Western civilization and Eastern civilization. Because they're fundamentally divided on a fundamental definition of the human being. Does that make sense? Okay. So spiritual monism. You're getting a real good taste of my art skills. I do have some art skills, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to elaborate on a whole lot. A soul only, all right? These are little dashes. I can't draw something that's non-physical, so I have to put something on there. All right. Now, theism. I can also add deism. Deists believe God created. What do theists believe? Well, a little debate. They're a little in disagreement about a lot of things amongst themselves. And among theistic religions like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, right? 5 main world religions. 3 of them are theistic. 2 of them are spiritual monistic. These guys get off the hook for some reason. It encompasses a lot of the worldview, but it gets put under the radar as non-religious, so it doesn't get counted into it. Well, that's another topic. That's another topic. All right. So this one's just soul only. Body only. Body and soul unity. All right. Now there's other options like Greek philosophers who thought that the body and soul, they thought of it differently. But just as a real quick snapshot, theists recognize and affirm and believe that human beings are a body and soul unity. We're both a body and a soul. Not I'm a body and I have a soul in me somewhere and it's like it's there. Like I can almost touch it, like it's there. It's not I have a soul, it's that I am a soul. When I say I, the very thing that I'm talking about, I and me, is the soul, the one that's thinking. Thoughts are non-physical. Emotions are non-physical. Right? These are spiritual qualities. When I say my arm, I'm saying my soul's arm. Like me, the soul, me, here's its arm. And when I think about it, it does this. I can make it do all kinds of cool things. Right? But it's not that and theists have to think a lot about this. I've heard a lot in different circles where I've even heard this in churches where they treat the view of the human person almost like there's a soul trapped in a body or something like that. It's wrong. There has to be a lot of dominion in this work to identify the specific ways the soul and the body are unified and how the mind and the brain work together. That it's not one or the other. Okay? But at the end of the day, theists will affirm that we're a body and soul unity. That it will holistically tie together my non-physical attributes and my physical attributes. My body has worth and dignity and value, as do my mind, my thoughts, my desires and wants, my ability to choose. These things matter too. Both. Does that make sense? So based on my worldview, materials, only matter exists. Spiritual monism, only spirit exists. Theism, both exist. The infinite, invisible, spiritual creator, who's non-physical, creates the world. Physical. Both exist. Does that make sense? So both, it's a worldview that includes both the material world and the spirit exists. It's a big deal. Do you see how that fundamentally changes your view of the human person? At the level of existence, right? We're not just talking about what makes you happy and whether it should or something. We're talking about like your very nature, man, like your core. Like what you are. This is the world in which slavery exists. It's when we don't understand what a human being actually is and how human beings actually ought to be treated. What's good for something is based on its nature. It's not good for a person to have to sleep with 50 strangers a week that ruins them mentally, emotionally, and physically. It's not good for them based on their nature. For the slave owner, it's not good for them. It's self-destructive to them to separate themselves, to not even know their own humanity and deny the dignity of other people, which requires that they deny their own dignity by reducing life, the fullness of life, to money, pleasure, to be hypocrites. Right? That destroys us, our hypocrisy, when we say one thing and do something else. We unravel ourselves. We don't know it at the time, but we see the after effects throughout the years. Our hypocrisy will force us to finagle and help us sleep at night, and right? All the things like I have to remember all the lies I told so that one day I don't accidentally tell the truth and that I've been lying this whole time, right? It's that kind of thing. Okay. So, at the level of existence, our view of human nature is determined. Now, this is relevant, this is important. There are a lot of abortions that go on in the world. India is a place where a lot of abortions go on, even after birth. There's a documentary I recommend watching called Gendercide. It talks about sex selection. You're a girl, born in certain places. That's tough. There's a reason why there's so many more males in certain countries than females. It's not genetic. It's choices that people are making. It's because of their worldview that they think the female human being is less valuable than the male human being. All right? One more reason why this matters. Speaking of abortion, the debate is always, when does human life begin? Right? That's what we debate. But that's not the only question. First of all, what is human nature? First, let's start there, define it. Because only then can we ever decide when it begins. But in the world of what we're talking about here, the question is also, when does life end? If a person believes that when you're dead, you're dead, that when you end a life, it's done, it ceases to exist, that's here. That's here. That's this worldview. Okay? In this worldview, it's more of like, well, they'll continue to exist in some other form or something like that. All right? They never stop to exist. It's only in this one that allows for the idea that even if you die physically, you still exist. You still exist. Your mind, your emotions, your will, you can't kill those. You see how epic? Like, this is epic. This is a big deal. So when a slave owner is mistreating and abusing a slave, and they say, well, they just die, who cares? They're thinking that when you're dead, it doesn't matter. They're not thinking that like, oh, this is a person that will like continue to exist in some, right, after they die physically or something. Like, it's a very different worldview. All right, you guys seeing the connection? Good. All right. Now the next one I'm going to talk about quickly is about human equality. I had a teacher once talk to me. He was giving a lecture, and he was talking about human beings and human equality. And essentially he said that those humans over there are not equal to us over here. We're not equal to those humans over there, or something like that. Those humans over there are not equal to these humans over here. Does anyone recognize a problem with that statement? Well, bad logic.
We're all humans. We all got here the same way, even if you don't think we have a creator. We all started out equally. We're all people that got here, by birth, even if you don't think we have a soul.
Yeah. The fact that he's saying those humans over there are not equal to these humans over here. In other words, there's some definition of human that they match and we match, that fits the bill, that we have in common, that we're equally the same thing, right? Are we equally economic? No. Are we equally politically? No. Are we equal with our level of education, our state size, color, talent, ability? No. No, 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 no. There's a bajillion ways we're not equal. But humans, to qualify a definition of human, if you're a human and you're a human and I'm a human, despite all of our differences, what is it? What makes us the same? What faculty, what capacity do we have that makes us human, despite gender, despite ethnicity, despite even worldview? That just in reality we're equally human. So to give you an example, think about the nature of a car, a truck, a semi-truck, a van, a minivan, a motorcycle. These are all very different things, right? Like whether or not you have a car or a motorcycle makes a big difference if you're going to go drive out in the snow, right? Because they're very different. But they're all automobiles, right? They're all equally automobiles. So even though that they're diverse, very diverse, in how they're built and how they're wired and how they work, they share in common the definition of an automobile, right? Despite all those differences. And in fact, we can recognize that it's really awesome and really beautiful that the automobile comes in so many diverse forms, so many diverse options, right? I don't need a semi-truck. I just need something big enough for myself, my wife, and 3 kids, and some groceries, right? If everything was a semi-truck, right, I'm not getting on that highway, basically, ever, because there'd be way too many semi-trucks. It's the same with human beings. We're diverse. Yes, very. Diverse talents, abilities, interests. There are things that you like to do that would drive me nuts if I had to do it. Some of you might like to sew. Please do not ever make me sew something. Not a fan. But you love it, and that's awesome. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad. It's not bad. It's great, right? Some of you are computer nerds. Thank God. Thank God for your computer nerdiness, right? I don't want to build a computer or rewire a hard drive or something, but I'm really, really stoked that some people do. Really glad they do that, okay? So we're diverse in a lot of ways. But we're diverse. Diversity only makes sense in context of our equality, our sameness, what we share in common. That's why we say they're diverse. They share something in common, and it comes in diverse forms of expression. Otherwise, we would just be talking about they're different, right? We'd be saying the difference between a monkey and a polar bear, right? They're just a different species altogether. Does that make sense? So here's my point with this. We have to be able to, we cannot think of it, like when I see you, I can't just see your diversity only. I can't just see all the ways that we're different. And if we only focus on our differences, especially when we're over here talking about the problems and the solutions, if all we see are our differences, right? We see all the ways we're not equal, all the ways we don't have anything in common. You don't know me, and you never can, and you never will. Done. You stay on that side of the aisle, I'm good over here. Right? But if we understand first and foremost our human equality, human nature, here's what it is. And then in that context, we say we're diverse. You see how mentally that makes a difference? If I say we're diverse and then, yeah, I guess in some ways we have something in common, not quite sure what that is. But whatever, we're equal in some way. Or the Declaration of Independence says so anyway, so, I'll take their word for it. It's different than me saying we're equal, then diverse, versus we're diverse and then somehow we're equal. Does that make sense? It's really important we get that straight in our thinking. This will be one of my conclusions, is that we have to get really, really good at seeing our own humanity in others. If I only focus on our differences and all I see is what makes us different, and that's divisive, right? You guys with brown hair. I like this weird mixture of like blonde brown. That's my preference, right? We have to think about it in the right context, in the right order. We're human beings equal first, and in that context. We have to see our humanity in others. When I see you, when I see someone on the street, it's not just I'm seeing random faces. I'm seeing a person just like me. That at the basic level, despite all the ways we're different, regardless of any bad choice that person or people have made, we're the same. And I see my humanity in them. That's the premise about when we're thinking about the value, the worth of a human person, and how we treat others. Okay, so let me just tie it all together. From our worldview, from the basic points of our worldview, through the lens of our worldview, we derive a concept and a definition of what a human being is. Whether or not human beings are equal or not. Human equality, what is the justification for human beings as equal through the lens of humanism? Right? How are humans equal? Spiritual monism. What do we all share in common? What makes us the same? What makes us equal? Are we equal? Can we possibly be equal? Or like the Declaration of Independence says that all men were created equal, right? That's going to be theistic or a deistic worldview that derives that type of concept, which becomes the basis. Notice the Declaration of Independence. It recognizes a certain view of the human person. Okay? Created equal is a big deal, right? Our view of the human person is this. and they have the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right? So it starts with a premise. Here's our view of the human person. That becomes a foundation for the entire society, the foundation for the entire culture, healthcare, economics, and political system. Does that make sense? It also becomes what enables the abolishment of slavery. There's a reason why we had a civil war in this country. Slavery was a big part of that war. You guys are hypocrites. You say you're all created equal, but then you treat these others completely not equal, right? You're saying something and you're doing something else. You talk a good game, but you don't live by it, right? So that even affirming that truth is what allows for the hypocrisy to be seen and allows for it to be exposed and overcome. Does that make sense? It's because America said all humans are equal that the fact that we didn't treat all humans equal became such a problem. Many countries have had legal slavery. America didn't invent this concept. But they weren't so audacious to say you're all equal and then have slaves. They said, no, you're not equal. And the slaves are the ones that are less, and then the ones that own them are the ones that are better. But we are the ones that are audacious enough to say we're all equal. And we have slaves. It's like, one or the other, not both, please. Right? Pick a camp. So it allowed for the hypocrisy to be seen. All right. So our worldview determines our view of the human person from the level of existence and the level of equality, which derives our view of society and what determines a flourishing society, which is where we derive an understanding of the problems. What is the nature of the problem of slave labor being used in the supply chain? What is unethical about it? Be specific. What's so wrong about organs? I need a liver. I don't know where it came from. Right? Sex slavery. I'm a man. Come on. Man's got needs. Right? What's wrong with it? What's the nature of the problem? Where does the demand come from? Where does the craving and the desire and the wanting for that come from? What worldview is being used here? What view of human person is being used here? And on to solutions, right? And I'm leaving this blank because this is where you guys come in. What are the solutions, right? But also have, the handouts I gave you are just a few Xerox pages of my book, which talk about, just give some practical steps of how to get involved in the issue of modern day slavery. How much time do we have? Okay, perfect. Okay. So final thoughts. Examine. Conclusions for philosophical. Examine your ideas. Do you just declare humans are equal? Or to what degree can you show it? How well do you understand the way that we're equal? I'll give you a hint. We're all using our minds right now. Right? I don't have any Great Danes in the audience listening to my lecture and thinking about it. Right? Something about us thinking, our ability to think, our consciousness, makes us the same. Examine your hope. Do you think it's possible to abolish modern day slavery? I'm not saying do you think it's easy. Do you think it's possible? In the world of ideas, is this a logically possible option? You say, oh, it's so complex. I get it, it's complex. But if we can master it at the basic level, where it's simple. Oh, I'm sorry, that can't possibly be true. That can't possibly be true. Here's the one that's logically true. Derive a concrete view of the human person. Here's what a human being is. Here's what it is. right? In the full sense. Derive a view of the human society and what a flourishing society looks like and ought to look like, how we ought to treat each other. Not just how I think we ought to treat each other, but like how we actually ought to treat each other. Truly. To help us see the problems clearly. That hose, it's just got a little crack in it. You can't even see it, it's just a hairline crack. But your car doesn't run. It's a little tiny crack, right? The problems to derive solutions. So examine your ideas, examine your hope. And then I'm going to add this. So an element of worldview that's not only specific to one common worldview. Narcissism. Complete self-centeredness. Complete, it's about me. I got to get mine before you got to get yours. The dog-eat-dog world. Good luck. I'm the alpha male, dang it. I will win this argument. I will win this. I will be the first in line. Okay? Narcissism. The complete opposite of seeing your humanity in others. It's just me. I see me. And you become a tool that serves me. Right? I love you. I'll treat you kindly with respect, with dignity. But at the end of the day, I'm always trying to persuade you to benefit my cause, my interests, my needs. Right? So extinguish your narcissism. We all struggle with this. Pride, ego, self-centeredness, thinking of ourselves a little more than we should. Right? We have to be honest with ourselves. It's called living the examined life. Think critically. Be honest with yourself. What does your bank account prove? Right? We can say, oh, I'm not vain or materialistic. Okay, let's examine our bank statements and see. Right? Am I? Am I? Not what I think or feel or believe, but like what proof in the pudding. What does it say? Yeah, there's a little, didn't quite need those new shoes or whatever. So examine your ideas, your hope, extinguish your narcissism, see your humanity in others. And then this is the last thing. Know your talents, your specific talents. Follow your interests and your curiosities and develop the heck out of them. Flourish with your diversity. The opposite of a society that embraces slavery and the oppression of people is flourishing people. People that are flourishing. You want to recreate culture? Flourish. Reach your highest potential. Know your talents. I'm not cramming myself into a cookie cutter what other people say I need to be or what other people say I should be. This is what I'm good at. And I'm going to get better because I'm going to work at it. I'm going to master the craft. Right? Forget this system that I have to just do something and just drudgery. No, I want a flourishing society, a flourishing person. I want the slave owners to be as uncomfortable around me because I make them feel guilty by how I live my life as I am uncomfortable around them when they try to pitch. You want some young girls? Come on. You got what you need. Man, that's uncomfortable. What are you talking to me about that stuff, man? No, I don't want that. I want them to be uncomfortable just in the way they make me uncomfortable. So flourish as a solution. That's the one solution I'll give you. Thank you. I'm going to pass around. Okay, so you have the little tags where if you wrote your name and email address on them, we're going to do a drawing and you have a chance to win a copy of my book. I'm going to pass copies around so you can see them. They're for sale in the big room. I'm also going to pass these around, which is, this is a visual map of like a more complex and beautiful description of what we just went over. The connection between worldviews, ideas, and what our beliefs are to how they derive a view of the human person and how they derive our view of human society. So I'm going to let those go around as well. Okay. All right. And as we're doing this, feel free to ask questions. If you have comments, questions about what we talked about. Slavery in the world of ideas. Why does it matter?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your number? What do you pick? What number for whether we can abolish modern day slavery?
Oh, There's always one of you in the audience. There's always one in the audience. 10.
10?
10. We can. We can. We've done it. We did it we know how to do it. Here. Application. Think critically. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's probable. But possible? You bet. You bet.
Does that maintain then it's possible to change everyone's worldview to a theistic?
Good point.
Is it possible to change? No, absolutely not. I have no power to change your worldview. But I can provide you with a whole lot of wonderful ideas and arguments that debunk your worldview. I can do it in a meaningful, empowering way to cause you to think critically about your life and your worldview, to examine your choices. Three of the 5 world religions are theistic. That is not normal. Human history, that's not normal. Okay? That's new. That's happened in the last couple thousand years. Gradually. That's progress.
But those views are very oppressive as well to human beings. So, not to be, because I think there's hope for individuals, but for an entire world, that's called heaven.
Well, now you're getting into an even more fun topic that I really want to get into.
I loved your thought-provoking ideas, I really do, but I'll stick with one.
Well, see, that's a debate about eschatology, the view of the goal of life. What are we doing? So in the world, with heaven as an idea, the question would be raised, is heaven the goal of life? What is this whole we're called to do the work of dominion thing at the beginning? Is that still relevant?
Absolutely.
So even amongst theists, the debate is, does good overcome evil gradually through time, right? Working, building on the work of others. Good, gradually overcoming evil, flourishing on the earth. But the earth is full of the knowledge of God as the waters cover the sea. Or is it just gets so bad, it gets so evil wins, that we just need to need rescue. Does evil win? Or is it good and evil just always kind of coexist? They're always kind of just tagging along together forever, right? That's how one begins their beliefs, their worldview. That I'll show you on this poster. Concludes with. Well, let me say this. How one determines and thinks about their origin will determine how they think of their destiny. So way here at the very end, number 15 on this poster, is ideas about the future. And that's where I recognize that concept of are we going to heaven or are we building heaven? Are we praying that the kingdom comes or are we praying that we go to the kingdom? Right? It's different. Very different. And theists aren't all in agreement. Even amongst all Christian denominations. Definitely not all in agreement, right? There's debate, right? But it's very relevant thought to have, to discuss. Does that make sense? Okay.
It's Reformed theology, right?
What's that?
It's It's Reformed theology.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of, we can get into Calvinism here, we can get into all the good stuff, right? We'll leave it on good terms, everybody. We don't want to
So
get...
the Reformed theologians are the 10 and the...
No comment. So there's practical options. So like I said, I gave you a Xerox of a few pages in the book, and this just lists 20 different ideas of practical things that we can do in our community to abolish modern day slavery, okay? The book is a resource, obviously, that I endorse because I wrote it. That would be a good place to go. I need help getting into schools and organizations around the state and country. And then the posters are there.